Lions fans? Welcome to the Detroit Lions podcast. This is episode 486. This is the Detroit Lions final week before Cutdowns. And I am your dashing, glorious, wonderful host, Chris, and with me is my good friend and co-host, Jeff. Le Riz Rizdon. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Chris. It is great to be with you. It is great to be with this Lions fan, the Detroit Lions podcast, the reach that we've got. It's unbelievable, man. I am so incredibly sleep deprived that I can't even talk or think. I'm just really happy to be here.
We don't need you to think. We don't need you to talk. Oh, we actually do, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Oh man, we got a lot to talk about today, man. It's been a week.
Dude.
I feel like people are a little bit nervous about post Jaguars game. Detroit Lions. The team's over. It's a world of hurt. It's scary. It's terror. I think we should talk about that today.
Yeah, I think so. We've hit the point where like we're hitting some adversity and some things that would cause doubt in those that are prone to doubt. And some people have really run with that.
You know, there's a lot of people
it's a little frustrating.
There's a lot of people that don't like this guy, but he had some very poignant words. When in doubt, I whip it out. We got a lot to talk about today. In today's show, we're going to do our warm-ups like we like to do. We got the trade watch.
It's a free-for-all!
We got the trade watch underway. Jacksonville preseason game takeaways. Got a lot to talk about here. I think there's some ups, some downs, some overreactions, some reactions. We'll get to it. We'll talk about it. We'll see what to think, what we think. And then you can think otherwise, because that's what you're welcome to do. We got the roster bubble watch. We got a beachfront debate and a whole lot more. We got a lot going on. A great show, Riz. Are you ready to go, my man?
Looking for my beach, but yes, let's do it.
Let's kick this off and break it down.
Hey there, Peaceful Tim. How you doing? Bump up at you, buddy.
Nectar of the gods. I love being in Allen Park so I can get Smoothie King.
Where would you find, if you had a god in front of you, where would you get the nectar from? I'll leave it at that. Okay. Very well navigated, young man. Very well navigated. All right, we've got a lot to talk about. First, Joe Williams, thank you, sir, for the subscription. Thank you for doing that. Remember, folks, please subscribe, like, all that stuff. It's that time of year, 2 weeks to go, where we get ready and run the season. All those likes, those subscribes, they help out. Share it with your friends. Let your friends know. You know, that's actually the ultimate compliment you can pay is if you share the show with your friends. It's very nice of you, those of you who do that.
It might also help you make more friends.
I believe that's true. Also, the logo's changing on the audio podcast. Audio listeners, don't get lost, don't get afraid. We've been warning you about that. If you're surprised by it at the end of this month when it happens, well, that's on you. Daily DOP. Have you been seeing that, Riz? Mr. Ash, he's got one. I'm telling you. So, look,
Ash cracks me up.
Oh, God, he's so sardonic. I love it. Yep. He's got one come up tomorrow. I told him, I just put it together, edited it before this. It is my favorite one that he's done so far. It's really, really, really well done. I'm excited.
Try to catch him live because then you can like converse in the live chat. So it is worth watching like live in real time, so you can be one of the people that comments in it. It's fun.
Yes,
and you're saved in perpetuity.
Yes,
his idea of answering other people's questions mailbag was brilliant.
Yeah,
and it was great because like 3 of the questions were directed to me, and he handled them for me. So thank you, Ash.
All right, we got that. So, and just so you know, the DLP, the daily DLP, if that's not enough, you don't even realize your lips are wrapped around a fire hose of content when you come here. I mean, your ear holes are getting it, you know, it's your lips, your fire hose of content. You are getting filled up from every orifice. There is more coming next week. Big surprises, couple more creators joining, a lot more content coming. It's going to be, you just cross out your calendar because it's all DOP all the time. All right. Let's see. Not the last thing. I have to tell you, the season for St. Jude. We've decided this year not to do just a single little event with just the auction and the 24-hour thing, which I guess wasn't that little because it was a pretty big deal. This is going to be a whole season where we're going to raise money for St. Jude. Already, BZ Ski out of the Slack saw it and put a $50 down there. We're shooting for $50,000 more this year. We know you folks can help us do it. So thank you, BZ Ski, for that. And you can go to stjude.org/DLP. I recognize right now that I forgot to put that on the screen down there. I'm sorry, stjude.org/DLP and get a donation in there. We appreciate you all who do that. Fantasy football, last thing we'll talk about, fantasy.detroitlionspodcast.com, fantasy.detroitlionspodcast.com. I mean, the two things that do absolutely go together, your fantasies and Detroit Lions podcast. All right. Let's get into it. You're down to about the last week and a half to get going. So we're gonna jump into that. All right. Let's go into warm-ups. The first thing, Riz, as usual, the folks are following up. The Xerox machine is running just right. People are catching up with the idea that Brian Branch just actually might be kind of good. And there's been a lot of praise for him today in particular, but folks are really warming up. I mean, he was
really good today.
It was absolutely obvious this guy had something really special about him, and he's continued to grow, build upon that. And you talk about the steal of the draft. You talk about all the different things that you could see or think of from a player. Branch brings it, man, and we got him. I don't want to say we got him for cheap, but we got him for cheap, man. He shouldn't have been where he was. I love it.
I do have to preface this. It is the preseason. Like, we've seen preseason stars come and go, but I just don't think that Brian Branch is going anywhere. He's so good. I loved him in the draft process. I would have taken him at 18. I would have been okay if they took him at 12. I think he was my number 14 overall player. He's really good.
Yeah.
And, I'll put on my draftnik hat as the managing editor of Draft Wire at USA Today. I'm fairly tuned into that. And the amount of my draft colleagues who insinuated that he was slow, I don't know where y'all went, but that's an island that's evacuated now. There's no way you can think he's slow if you watch him play.
Evacuation.
Certainly not in person, but even if you go back and watch some of the Alabama film, it's not that he was slow there. It's that he embraced, Chris, I've said this before, when you're a safety, some of them literally embrace the actual meaning of that word and play a little safe because you're the last line of defense. And if you miss, it's really bad. And I think that's what Brian Branch did a lot at Alabama. And you're seeing him less have to do that here. And my God, he ended practice today with an interception where he absolutely baited Jared Goff into a terrible pick. But it was a fantastic interception on his part, sort of like feigning a rush, dropping back, getting in the passing lane and picking it off when he was trying to throw Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff he does, man. It was beautiful. And he had a phenomenal day. I know Ben Raven from M Live, he missed last week. He was in Italy in some castle for a wedding, which is pretty damn sweet. But he came back today and all he could talk about all day was Brian. Like, oh my God, Brian, I missed this. Like, yeah, dude. He's really good. He's really good.
Well,
and he doesn't start. Still doesn't start. But he's
Soccer
really
Wizard.
Good.
Soccer Wizard brings it up. 40 times definitely get too much hype, and I would agree. They are an indicator. They're absolutely an indicator. But football speed is a completely different animal than getting out in your tracksuit and running a straight line. And Brian Branch is one of those examples that has to give GMs a moment to pause and rethink. Don't just sit on the 40 time to figure out how a guy's play. Guess what? Go watch the tape. Go to the games, watch the man play, and see what he brings. You cannot beat that combination of items. The stats are important. The combine, what do they get? 3 shots at the 40 at the combine, and that's it. That doesn't tell you a whole lot, and it could be a bad day. It could be any number of things. It's one indicator amongst many. You have to look at the entire body of work. So don't get caught up. GMs, well, other GMs, sure, Holmes won't, but armchair GMs, don't get caught up in the singular stats and characteristics. It's a whole body work you have to think
Chris,
about.
if you went by the pure athleticism, Denzel Mims would be an All-Pro. Now he's looking for work.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, he was hurt. He was waived injured. I'll give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt on that, but he had played his way down the depth chart. He wasn't getting first team reps anymore, even before the injury. And he was getting some before that. Josh Reynolds and Marvin Jones had pretty clearly passed him. I would expect an injury settlement soon with him, so he can try to latch on somewhere else. And I wouldn't bet on success there.
Another one, Will Harris, who's going to be who's an absolute athlete and a half. If you go strictly by the stats and his athleticism, my man should have been starting number one cornerback week 1, year 1, right? I mean, he is an absolute monstrosity out there.
That's right. He was a cornerback to start. That's right. No, he was a college safety, and they moved him to cornerback. And Tracy Walker was a college cornerback, and they moved him to safety. And one of those worked. Tracy played well today too, by the way. Not getting first team reps, but he's looking good out there.
Yeah. All right, let's get with it. We also have, come on, I mean, I can't help it. It's just Branch, who I am.
Branch is so good.
And you guys are
get your 32 jersey now.
It's the way things are. You're going to get this all year. It's not just us. It's going to be everywhere. We're just probably the worst at this kind of thing, or I am in particular, and Riz is along for the ride. But hooker play, another little warm up here. Saw a little breaking Instagram story that was bandied about as if it was like incredible news. Did you know that Riz, that hooker might get activated this season? Who'd have thought? I had no idea that Hendon Hooker might be activated for the Detroit Lions in 2023. This is unthinkable.
That's heavy.
It was all a question of when, right?
Yeah, if anybody could tell me when he's going to be activated, I'd be very happy to receive that information. As Dan Campbell said last Thursday, they haven't really talked about it yet. And guess what? I believe Dan more than I believe somebody that aggregates my aggregation. Come on, y'all.
Aggregates my aggregation. Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's unfortunately that is part of my job. I do have to do that. I don't particularly care for it, but it helps pay the bills, and it allows me to do things like going to training camp today and giving I think I wrote 1,700 words while I was sitting at Panera watching people fight in Panera. That was fun. Somebody may have thrown a baguette at someone. Wasn't me. I wasn't involved. But yeah,
Farmer Riz from Ohio. The buck.
That allows me to, you got to pay your dues sometimes so you can do the fun things. And the fun things are going to camp, and going to games, and doing film breakdowns and stuff like that. Sometimes we also have to write the same thing that everybody else writes because it's just what we do.
Yep.
But then the people who rewrite what we all collectively refer to, all of us in the Lions blogosphere and media sphere, right? Y'all, come on. Come on, man.
Don't get me going on the collusion.
I won't.
All right.
I will just say one quick recommendation here. If you care about the AI sports writing thing, and I do very deeply, my friend Arif Hassan wrote something on his Wide Left Substack today about how they used an AI bot to cover a high school football game in Ohio, and it's great. And I would strongly suggest you read it. Subscribe to Arif's work. He covers the Vikings. I know a lot of people don't really care for that. He's a really, really bright guy, and he has a very good eye for things. Love you, Arif. And I cannot recommend today's article specifically enough. It's very good.
I will go check that out, in particular because I am working and building an AI model right now as part of my daily grind. Well, I'm not. I have a team of people, but it's ultra interesting. Here's something that a lot of people don't know. The Washington Post today, all of their high school sports coverage is AI. they've convinced the high schools, and I'll say convinced, but whatever. It's a national paper that has local coverage. And
or coerced.
Think of it. I don't think so. Think about this. Think about this. If the Detroit Free Press, oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to use that. That doesn't exist anymore. We'll go with the Detroit News, a source of quality media. We'll you just can't comment. Freep, seriously.
Literally can't comment.
I know. So anyway, you go, if they were to say to all, and they were a national paper, right? And they were to say to the local high schools, send us the stats of all your games, and your games will be covered in our newspaper. That's not coercion, convincing. They'd be like, hell yeah, cover us. A national paper, our high school program, for sure. What a great way to get our guys out there, right? And that's exactly what the Washington Post does. They have the high schools submit their stats in a standard format. It's sent in. Their bot chews it up, writes a story, and spits out every single one of their high school sports stories is written by AI. It's pretty incredible, man. This is obviously where things are going. And I don't know where the technology is going. I know, and I'm doing things that I know nobody's thought of or is doing. Like I've been to a number of conferences. We are on like the bleeding edge in this space of what we're doing. It's pretty crazy, even to me, who's kind of, been a kind of, thoughtful part of this, what we're doing and how well it works and just where it could go. It's really something. And there's going to be like one of the things, I'll just stop. I don't want to go too far into this isn't AI talk, but one of the things that's really crazy about it is AI hallucinates, man. And that's the thing that's really nuts because it hallucinates with credibility. And anyway. Okay, we'll leave it at that. That's the warm-up. Tactile Puma. I'm sure ChatGPT is better than Carlos. Yeah, it stopped at 2021 data, and I would say, the AI is programmed not to be terrible. There you go. That's our warm-ups. Let's get right into the first thing.
Yes, please.
The first topic that we have to cover today. Trade watch. Julian Okwara on the block. Is he on the block? He's on the block. I've heard he's on the block. Somebody said is he? Well, we have somebody from the building with a report from the building, from people he's talked to, maybe in the building, maybe outside the building, maybe people that are in the building, but we're talking outside of the building. Jeff Risdon has some words on the trade watch.
I've talked to people in both buildings who confirmed that there's some interest in Julian Okwara from the Giants side, and that I legit do not know if a deal is going to get done. If it did, I would probably trumpet that, but I expect something. I don't think he's making the Lions. I don't think he's making the initial 53-man roster. And I think the Lions are aware of that, and I think other teams are aware of that. And he has certainly some assets. He played very well against New York. I explained a little bit why they like him so much. He got 3 sacks, had 3 QB pressures.
Yep.
Also played really well in their joint practices. So today, so there are 2 practices. We have practice today, and we have practice. This is Tuesday. We're doing the show day early for logistical purposes on my part. Thank you for coming in early, and thank you, Chris, for agreeing to it because I could not do tomorrow.
You're helping me with my schedules the next couple of weeks, brother. Hey, this is a give and a take.
So Wednesday is the last practice that they have before roster cutdowns because you've got the preseason game Friday night. They're off Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday is just like a non-contact practice. Or I think there's one practice between then, but it's not like a full contact practice or anything. It's more like an install / walkthrough.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So Julian played. I legit don't know if he played on defense today. I did not see him. That doesn't mean that he didn't play on defense, but if he did, it was sparingly, and it certainly wasn't anywhere close to the starters. And that leads me to believe that they want him healthy because he was. I did see him on a couple of punt coverage units. He whiffed on a block. That doesn't help his case very much in making the Lions. So I don't. He will not be on any roster projection that I have, and I'm going to suspect that if you look around to a lot of the 53-man projections that you're seeing around the Lions land right now, he's probably not on many, if any, of them. And he is an NFL player. He does have some NFL skills. They're limited. He's got injury durability problems, and that's an issue. If the Lions can get for him what the Jets got for Denzel Mims, which is basically a pick swap of a 6th for a 7th, and you throw the player in, I think the Lions would take that money and run. Yeah. And I think that very well might happen. The Giants would certainly be a leading contender because we'll wind back to when the Giants came to Detroit for joint practices. And one of their media members, who I've known for a very long time, asked me who might be on the trade block. And I suggested to him a few names, Logan Stenberg being one of them. And he's like, what about Julian Okwara? I'm like, well, okay, yeah, he makes sense on that. I had actually brought up somebody different on the defensive front, but he's like, I don't think you're trading him. I'm like, I don't either, but you never know. But then we kind of settled on that. And then I contacted this person again. When did that tweet come out? It was yesterday morning. So it was yesterday afternoon. Yes, I was driving my daughter to my daughter's a driver's ed now, and I'm freaking paranoid about that. I was driving her to driver's ed, and I talked to him. My daughter will actually verify that we had this conversation because she was sitting there listening to the car. And I'm like, yeah, I think they would get rid of Julian or deal him. And he's like, well, we're certainly going to be interested in that. So there's my confirmation that they are talking about Julian Okwara in other buildings and in the Lions building. Again, I don't know if it's going to happen. I kind of think it will. I don't know what the compensation will be, but my guess would be it's around the Denzel Mims compensation level.
And here's the problem right now. There's some questions that rolled by about iffy for a trade and that sort of thing. The problem is that you're not really. Everyone kind of knows that Okwara is going to wind up probably getting cut. So anybody that's likely to get cut has very little value. The value comes in knowing that you're the one that's going to get them rather than rolling the waiver wire dice. Right. So there's any big dollar, big move items going on here. So guys like Iffy, there is nobody cares enough about a guy who's so off every time. Ash, you should have heard the string of Canadian curse words that came out of him after he did his daily one, saying that if he had such a great day, and then like hours later, oh yeah, he's broken again. He was just so, it's every time the guy has an upward trajectory. Boom, out, injured, done.
His body is not made to handle playing football. That's just the plain fact we have to come to. We saw him today. He was running. He had his left quad, hamstring, thigh, whatever you want to call, like the femur bone and the crap that's around it was very, very heavily wrapped, like enough that it was like splitting his shorts. And he wasn't moving all that great. I wouldn't say that he was like days away, but I don't think he's playing this weekend, and he has so much trouble staying on the field. It's frustrating. So to your point about waiver wire, the Giants are a team. They're what? They made the playoffs last year, so they're like they are in the 20s in the waiver wire. So if they wanted a player like Julian Okwara, they probably can't wait for the cut because Chicago's up there. Chicago's still desperate for pass rushers. Minnesota desperate for pass rushers. You know, there's a lot of teams that need help. Cleveland needs pass rushers still. They're a lot better than they have been, but they still could use some guys. He's not going to fall if he's cut or waived. He's probably not falling to the Giants. So that's where you would get a value, and that's where you would get somebody to come in and maybe sign a guy or trade for a guy. But again, it's going to be very light compensation. You're talking about a conditional pick, whether or not they make the roster. They have to make room for it. I would actually love to see more player for player swaps at this time of year,
because
it just doesn't happen.
And you would think it would. Guys that you know you're going to drop and someone else knows they're going to drop, rather than have them hit the wire, just move them from spot to spot, right? Vacuum them up before they get out there. I would love to see that. I'm 100% with you. Really quick, Levi Onwuzurike, what's up with him? He looks decent, just has to get into football shape. This is the thing I think no one's really talked about with Levi. Levi, it really is a football shape thing. I think what we've seen so far is the injury isn't the hindrance on his play right now. It's not an injury problem. I would agree. So now you have a guy that you can stash on the roster, right? He's an inactive for a couple of weeks, but on the roster, and 5 weeks, 6 weeks into the season, you have a fresh interior lineman available who's suddenly, into his football shape and ready to play. That's pretty valuable. Maybe it's 8 weeks or 10 weeks. Who knows? But that's super, super valuable, especially if it's a guy with the potential of a Levi Onwuzurike. Nobody's talking about that, about the kind of late opportunity that Levi has. Everyone's like, is he there day one? Maybe not, but I wouldn't make that a deal.
I think he's making the 53.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you saw some things today. He did get one series of first team defensive tackle reps, but most of the time he was with the twos, and there was one time where he was playing with Christian Covington with the threes. So they're clearly still trying to see it. He made a couple of nice plays today. He also got thrown on his ass in the run game twice.
Yep. And
that's sort of what you get with him. Remember, this is a guy who's had 1 year of football practice since 2019. Like, it's just not. He's so incredibly raw as a football player, and he's very athletic. He's got a great attitude. I've gotten to speak with him very briefly, and I've been around him when he's talking with other people, and it's like, wow, man, you want to root for this guy. But he's very green. I mean, this is you're looking at a guy who's the equivalent, like, football, like, practice and skill and experience wise of like a junior in college. Yeah. And you're expecting him to go in and play against good players. He's going to have some wins and he's going to have some losses, and I think that's who he's going to be. They're ready with that. We'll probably talk a little bit more about him in the bubble watch category, because I think he is on the bubble, but I think he's on the right side of the bubble. I don't think it's going to pop on him.
What's still funny about that, and this is what I want people to kind of recognize about Levi, he's practiced a year since 2019, as you said. He could still kick everyone who's listened to this show's ass on the line, except maybe you, Coach Campbell. Except maybe you. You could probably still do it. I believe you got it. All right.
He's very physically impressive.
Yeah.
He just doesn't know how to apply that to football all the time, and he's got to learn that.
Question: does Will Harris have any trade value? Yes, I believe he does, but I think he makes the roster, to be honest with you.
I don't think there's any chance Will Harris is not making this roster.
Yep.
None.
Mike Hodges, how is the new cut them all at once cut down day affecting things? Is it tougher to anticipate future cuts when the waves of cuts we're used to aren't happening? This is where it does get really interesting, and I want to make a comparison.
This is a great question, Mike.
Yeah,
great question.
Originally, we talked about this at the training camp party, right? People talked about, players are going to get soft if they don't do 2-a-days. Players are going to get soft if they don't have enough practice time. Players are going to get soft if they cut down all the hitting and the pad work that they're going to do. If anything, they're so much harder. They are stronger, faster, better than they ever have been, because now it truly is on them to continuously take care of themselves. The guys who don't take care of themselves are in shape because they're forced to be in shape because of what happens at the facility. They've fallen by the wayside. They aren't there. These are guys that love football, that are in for the game, that are there 110%. You still have a small, crusty few that hang on, but you've shaken out a lot of the garbage to get to the very, very top tier athletes who care. Very much the same way that it was a contrarian outcome than what people thought would happen. I'm starting to try to figure out on this cut down day, everyone's like, oh my God, all this talent, it's not going to be okay. What's the contrarian view here? What's going to happen as a single cut down day instead of the waves? What is the net effect? How is the market going to adjust? Right. And I think what happens on cut down day is every team probably starts with a 50-man roster, whether they've cut the last 3 or not, because those bottom 3 on the roster are absolutely expendable if the right pieces of talent show up in the pool. That's probably one of the first pieces on the strategic side.
I would agree with that. I think one of the things that we're kind of curious about is if a player, let's say Julian Okwara, he knows he's not going to make the roster. Can you cut me 2 or 3 days early so I can latch on somewhere else? Because there's nothing that says you can't cut guys now. You don't have to be at 90 right now. They can cut 20 tomorrow. It'd make it tough to play a preseason game Friday night, especially since the starters aren't going to play again, but you could do that. And I wonder if that's going to be something that you see with guys that are like, oh, really? They're cutting him? Okay, well, the reason why they're cutting him early is so he can get out there and get a jump on the market. It's probably a favor to an agent or a favor to a player who's served them well, or they want to do right by him. I'm not sure that the Lions are going to do that. Okwara would be one guy that would be like that would fit. I think Matt Nelson, although I don't think he's getting cut, fortunately. Kabinda, if they were to cut him, I think would get that sort of treatment. Like they'd let him know, like, hey man, it's not going to happen here. We're going to put you out there, and you can find a place to go where, because like fullback especially is a very limited position. There's not many teams that use it. I think there was 9 last year.
Yep.
And I'll just say he is not one of the best 53 players on the team right now. He's probably not one of the best 73 players on the team right now. But I don't know if they're going to cut him or not. But that he is a good example of a player that they would do that for. Like, cut him Saturday morning after he gets back from Friday night. And okay, go find a place where you can go. We'll even help you. Like hey, San Francisco, you might need a backup fullback who can also play some special teams. How about Jason Kabinda? Like that, and that kind of stuff does happen. And that kind of stuff happens for teams and for players who have good agents and agents that teams like to work with. And in general, the Lions, that's a pretty good relationship with the agent base. There are a couple of agents who are adversarial, and that's how they roll, man. Like they're every negotiation will be an adversarial negotiation. That's how they approach it. But there's not many of them, and they tend to not have a lot of big name clients.
Yeah,
I can't think of any in Detroit that any of the prominent guys, like they don't really have that. So
yeah. We'll get on the roster to watch. We're just hitting a couple of these questions out of the chat because we love you folks who engage in the chat. Riz, I just texted you something. I just got something that popped in that you'll love. You'll absolutely buy on this one. More to come. Let's see. Home, the whole
Really?
thing. Home, the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, you might have to send that to me.
Oh,
we're doing a little inside baseball, folks.
Yeah. Chris plays high and falls a lot. Oh, sorry, that wasn't me. That was at me. Plays really high and he falls a ton. Yeah, a lot to see, lot to work on Broderick Martin. Broderick Martin is a really class dude. He's had some big wins. He's had some losses. He's got work. He's a young guy. Later round pick, right? We'll see more from him. He's not going anywhere though. He will not wind up somewhere else. They will make sure they hold on to him because he's a guy that has a lot to offer in time for this team, and I think that's really, really good. Other teams in the roster bubble that could potentially have interest in Lions. We'll talk about that. We're not there yet. We'll talk about that. This is all to start with Julian Okwara. We got to get to our next topic. Are you okay to move on, Riz?
I'm good.
I love it when you say you're good.
Let's do it.
I know it's true. All right. Jacksonville preseason game takeaways. I've been working since 6:30 this morning, non-stop, other than stuffing a couple tacos. I'm like mentally, I am like worn. So I apologize, folks, if I'm a little bit punchy on our show today.
I've been up since 4:10. So
yeah, I should have waited till 4:20. All right, let's say takeaways from the Jacksonville game.
Allergies suck.
What is it? Shingles don't care. Shingles
doesn't care.
All right. Takeaways from the Jacksonville game. I want to just start out with one, Riz, and you can call me high, you can call me crazy. It's okay. You wouldn't be the first person to do this, but I want to temper some of the freak out that seems to have occurred. Everyone seems to have forgotten the Giants game. And now it's like the team's in a ditch. There's no saving it. It's a fire. Did you see our third string? We have no, we can't play. Oh my God, we better start the starters this week because what the? I'm like, let's roll it back. First off, the thing that I've not heard anybody talk about is it was a game until 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I mean, and there was some goofy errors. There was the Bridgewater fumble early, right? I mean, it was a fumble. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, early in the game.
Brad Cecil missed his block because he wasn't used to playing.
Yeah, and
there was miscommunication, and God bless Jeremiah Ledbetter for getting and beating Craig Reynolds to the point of the handoff.
But Teddy, we'll talk about that. It's all about reps and building that kind of rapport with your players. He had a ball way behind somebody. He had trouble delivering the ball. That's not something that a week and a half in is making me think we're absolutely flushing the toilet on Teddy. He's out. He's not going to be good for this team. He has no hope. The team's on fire. We've got no depth. Do you imagine, if I ask you to go back in history, Riz, when was the last time that all 5 backups played on the offensive line?
In the regular season?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I know the Colts came close the year that Curtis Painter was starting for them. I think it was Jim Caldwell's year.
Yeah.
But yeah, that doesn't happen often.
So
you might have to play 2 backups.
We talked about that.
We did that at Halloween. We did that at Thanksgiving last year.
Yeah, and we talked about that, right? We watched these guys. The of any position group, the offensive line is reliant upon each other. So lower level players can be lifted by better players, and better players can be brought down towards the mean of the lower level players. But the beauty is that if we're playing 5 backup wide receivers, you're probably on your second or third quarterback too. You've got all kinds of other problems going on at that point. Yeah. That is not a real world situation in which you actually think this team is probably even watchable at that point. Unfortunately, that's the reality. We know we lack depth at offensive line. We know that. When all 5 of those guys play together, they are definitely not as good as the backups for Jacksonville. Jacksonville's a pretty good team, by the way. A lot of people have them ranked in the top 10.
That's a good football team.
Yeah. So, okay, they've got good backups. If that's what you're basing this on and what your evaluation of the offense is, I'm going to tell you that you may not be watching the right kind of football. There were things to work on. There was absolutely things to work on by all of these guys, but I don't think what we saw in Jacksonville is indicative of the quality of this team and how they're going to play against Kansas City starting week 1 and onward throughout the season until you start to see some of those injuries. I'm not pushing the panic button, and I can't believe what I saw. When I didn't watch the game. I was taking my son back to college, so I didn't get home till Saturday night. I was going to watch it Saturday night, but it was late. I was freaking exhausted. I didn't watch it. My wife and I sat down and watched it. We said, hey, we'll bring football back to Sunday. We'll have some fun and do it the old-fashioned way. So we watched it on Sunday. And all I got before I watched the game from everybody was, oh, yeah, they'll let you down. Oh, this was bad. I'm 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I'm like, it's still a game. This isn't a freaking disaster, folks. And now we're how deep in the roster by the time we're at the end of the third quarter, right? I'm sorry. It's just wasn't indicative of any reason to freak out about the team. That's how I'll start our conversation about the Jacksonville game. Tell me I'm a knucklehead, please.
I think you can judge. Teddy wasn't good, and that's frustrating, but it also is understandable given the fact that he had two practices and a walkthrough with his teammates.
Yep.
By the way, he wasn't good today either. But again, there's not a lot of. That's why he's playing so much. Nate Sudfeld didn't even get on the field today. Like it was Teddy or Jared and that was it. And Teddy needs those reps, and they're getting him for him. And yes, he needs them. And I think that's part of the point is that he's learning like if you're throwing it this pattern to this guy, the ball has to be here. If you're throwing it to that guy, it's got to be here. Like just little things like that. Teddy's still catching up to that, and it is going to be a work in progress. But I will say this: if he's playing more than 3 weeks, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. This is Jared Goff's offense. It's tailor-made to what Jared Goff does very well. We like that. It's a very good offense. Goff didn't have a great day today. A lot of that, I think, was because Amon-Ra wasn't playing and Panay just had a rotten day. But I'm not worried about what the backups did against backups. Like the offensive line is a great example. Let's say you've got to play Colby Sorsdal. Let's say Jonah Jackson gets hurt. That happens to him every now and then, and he misses 2 weeks. Him between Frank Ragnow and Taylor Decker is very different than him being between Brad Cecil and Jermaine Ifedi. Like, that's just the way that's football. I feel a lot better about the Colby Sorsdal in the latter situation than the former situation.
Yeah.
It's not going to be great, but no team has. I tweeted this during the game, and it literally happened 15 minutes before I did it. People who cover other teams are asking me what the Lions want for Jermaine Ifedi because he's better than anybody they've got. That's where offensive line depth is around the league.
Yeah.
It's wretched around the league. We are blessed to have a guy who can develop some talent and coax every last drop of juice out of that lemon in Hank Fraley. And damn, he's doing a pretty good job with that. But sometimes the lemons just ain't that much to squeeze there. And that's the problem that every team has. Like right now, this is not just a specific Lions problem. This is an everywhere problem. Yeah. Everywhere. I'm not worried about everywhere problems because then the Lions are the same as everybody else. There were two things that worried me about what happened. One of them is the running game, and again, you got the offensive line to deal with. The running game likes to do a lot where there's a lot of moving pieces, and they do this with the starters too. And quite frankly, there's too much movement with it. Like Ben Johnson gets a little too cute sometimes with his blocking schemes, and the defense can just like, okay, you guys go. I'm just going to go get the guy. And we saw that happen today with the starters. And that happened in New England. It happened with Buffalo last year. It happened in the Chicago game last year. Like Ben Johnson gets a little too cute with the run game sometimes. And Jacksonville annihilated that. They did it in the joint practices and they did it in the game too.
Yep.
Whether you're playing first or third team. That bothers me that Ben Johnson hasn't learned to take that crap out. Like, your left tackle does not need to be pulling around your right tackle who's moving the other direction to pick somebody off. Your center is going out to get the weak side linebacker because your right guard is pulling out and taking out the strong side linebacker, and your wide receiver is wham blocking the nose tackle. Like, stop that. It doesn't work.
I just saw Ocho Cinco trying to block Ray Lewis on a short. Maybe it was on TikTok. I don't know. I was rolling through some stuff, and he got hurt. like this is not just from a health perspective.
I remember that play. I know exactly what play you're talking about.
Yep.
The Lions do too much. If I'm going to criticize Ben, that's one of my criticisms of is that he tries to do that stuff too much, and when you're lacking the skill level on your offensive line and relative to your skill players, it's really awful. And we saw that Saturday. Like, you can't do that crap. That's one of them. The other thing that worried me a little bit was that I thought that the pass defense, they didn't play as well as they had in practices, and there was a lot of holding, there was a lot of miscommunication, and that miscommunication is specifically from the second team defense because a lot of those guys are going to play. You're going to see Starling Thomas play in the regular season. He's going to make this team. We'll talk about a couple of the other guys, but another thing, I almost think it's Aaron Glenn being what Ben Johnson is, that he's trying to make things a little like sometimes you just want the vanilla, man. You don't need the banana with the sprinkles and the nuts and the hot fudge and the caramel and the butterscotch and the marshmallow fluff on it. Sometimes you just want to have like a little bit of vanilla and maybe a little bit of chocolate to go beside it, and that's good. And I think that they get too cute with that too. I would like to see them simplify things a little bit, specifically when they have to intersperse the reserves with the starters. You know, let's say you have to. Rodrigo is pretty clearly the number 4 linebacker right now.
Right.
Let's say he's got to play because Derek Barnes gets hurt and Jack Campbell, whatever, just isn't there, and it's him and Anzalone. Like, don't ask him to do what Anzalone does, or don't ask him to do what Derek Barnes does. Like, let him do what Rodrigo does. I don't think the defense does a very good job of that. And obviously, it's preseason. Like, you're not going to change your scheme to fit bench guys. I get that. But I don't think that the Lions, you're asking guys to do things that you know they probably can't do, and that's not setting them up for success. And that frustrates me a little bit. That was my other take. That's my other negative takeaway from the Jacksonville game. I don't care at all about the score. I don't care that the receivers weren't getting open that well. I don't care that, like, that's, and the other thing, that is a good football team. That team won a playoff game last year. They're going to be expected to win one this year too. But based on what I've seen from them, that's a really, they have the fastest linebacking group I've ever seen in 21 years of covering the NFL. Their linebackers are ridiculously fast, which is one of the reasons why you don't run cutback runs against them, because it just doesn't work. But that was one of my takeaways. Jacksonville's good.
Yep.
It's a takeaway.
I think that a little bit of what Ben Johnson is doing out there is just checking some wild stuff out, seeing athleticism on his guys. What can some of these guys do? And isn't Definitely. Real world stuff. The one thing we have, and I'm not sure if this is going to work, but you can hear more about it shortly. Johnson power. That's Johnson power right there. Now, I'll do it one more time. Johnson power. Now, nobody knows that song. I will look in the chat. Maybe we'll find a prize for somebody if you know what song that is and what the band is.
I don't know that one.
It's awesome.
I don't know that
it's
one.
Fun stuff. And I've got we got some more from that. We'll have some fun with that. Anyway, so yeah, I think there's a lot that happens in the preseason. Someone said it right here, Combat Sec. Preseason is a good time to get found out, and I think they know about that. And I don't think that they're showing anything in there. And as a matter of fact, there's probably some red herrings that they're throwing in there as an opportunity to test the athleticism and how some of their guys work in some interesting situations. One thing we know is Ben Johnson knows how to run an offense. We know that Hank Fraley knows how to run an offensive line, how to build a run game plan, and so on. I'm not worried about that. I know that this team will be ready on week 1. I don't know that they will win, but it will be. I will be very, very interested to see where we're at. Soccer Wizard, Ben's final step will be realizing the opposing may not be as clever as him, so he doesn't need to overthink himself. I think that's an interesting piece, because I don't disagree with that. I think he is very in his own head sometimes, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I want to talk about something off the field, if you don't mind, Mr. Risden. Right. Mr. Risden, please. Sir. Graham Glasgow. Now, look, our wonderful announcers in the preseason, they're always the best of the talent that's out there, saying that he thought maybe high school would be good. But did he not absolutely look like a coach on that sideline? Did he not, like I loved the role that he took with the clipboard, talking through the plays, bringing the guys together. I was ultra impressed. And I think there's something that Graham Glasgow brings to this offensive line and to this offense that nobody was talking about. They all want to talk about, well, he didn't do so good in Denver, but he's got a good football mind, and he may well be a teacher, which is a very important piece. And guys like this, just keep your nose down, or not him, keep your nose on this, sniff around a little bit. You talk about the player coach, he wouldn't be the first player to turn to coach with this regime, right? I mean, not directly from the team, but like
I mean,
Calvin
Sean
Shepard.
Deion Hamilton did it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, there you go. You're right. You're right. Calvin Shepard, right? From player to coach to we can see it. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. This is really, really interesting. I loved what I saw there. And this team is a magnet for good guys. Yeah.
He did a press conference last Thursday. It was great. Like I didn't have the prior relationship with Graham Glasgow that a lot of other people did. So like when they're asking him some of the questions, I'm like, is that a great? And then he ran with it. I'm like, okay, all right, I like this guy. He's funny. He looks good. He looked good today. He's much healthier than he was in Denver. And after his press conference, we walked and talked a little bit with him. There was a group of 3 or 4 of us that did that. And one of us, wasn't me, asked him about Denver. And he's like, guys, I could barely walk. Like, and that was all I needed to say. He's clearly in a much better spot now and has ameliorated my fears about him because I did watch him in Denver and it wasn't pretty, but it's passed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man. So somebody's saying answer 14, rumor has it Goff's going to play for free so we can pay Ben $7.3 million a year to be OCs. I'll take a couple things. One, good thing there's no salary cap for coaches. 2,
you can pay coaches whatever you want.
I bet he's within a pair of millions or maybe 3 million of that number anyway. He got a new contract and Ben ain't hurting. I'll tell you that. They pulled out the bag for Mr. Johnson this year. And look, he stayed, right? He made a commitment and they made a commitment to him. I know, some of the numbers of some of the contracts of the coaching staff that haven't been publicized. And they're not afraid to take care of the help. How's that for a nice way to put on my Ford hat? Not afraid to pull out the checkbook. So there you go. Okay, so we got Glasgow. We got. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. I feel like the seconds, the number 2s looked wonderful out there on defense. And I mean, after coughing up, I mean, they had some really good stops in the red zone. They put the clamps down again on a good Jaguars team. A couple penalties helped out along the way, and much needed at the right time. By the same token, they weren't calling any pass interference this game. Did you see that? I mean, you could hang a whole wardrobe off of somebody's back. Nobody's throwing a flag. It was some pretty ugly stuff out there in that case. But we did get pretty lucky in the space of some of those penalties when they did.
I was fairly pleased with the defense. I thought they played. The offense did them no favors. When you gained 133 yards. They were 1 for 12 on third downs. Their average gain on first down was 0.7 yards for the game. That's not helping your defense.
No, not at all. Yeah. So I think that was good. Any other big takeaways, Mr. Risdon, from the Jacksonville game?
I think we collectively, as a Lions fandom, fell a little bit too much in love with Chase Cota over one nice punt return and a touchdown catch where he didn't get covered. He's been good, no doubt about that. He's certainly in contention to make this roster, but I think we elevated his accomplishments in that game collectively. The no Sotros form here too high because there weren't any other good points. Like, we're just going to celebrate and linger on the.
People super high in Chase Cota. There was one play. It was Drummond, in particular, that wild ass cut across the middle of the field. He came in, little slant, and then cut and bought himself 3 yards. I watched that like 3 times. They played the replay. I was like, and it was like the field view from the end zone in. I was like, holy shit. Oh my, that was really, I mean, it was butter, but butter smooth, but sharp. It was a 90-degree freaking corner, and he just went boom and changed direction. It was really, really, really impressive, bro. He had trouble a couple times out there, but this Drummond kid, man, if he can get it all put together, he could really be something special. That route running he's got is just
it's very good.
Smoke,
and so today he was repping ahead of Coda. I'm not sure he got any with the ones. He might have had a couple of like plays with the ones, but Coda's still down there with the Trinity Bensons of the world and new guy. It's gonna be some work for him to make it. Not that he's not a good player, but there's the punt return job is not open, and I think that's going to be the issue for him. Is when fantastic punt return, like, well, yeah, that's what Khalif does. Like, that's his job.
Yep.
And he's not giving that up.
No,
Maurice Alexander, by the way, on the injury front, Maurice Alexander was back today and was the first team kickoff returner. For those of you who like to keep score of those things.
Can we just really quick get I know every time we talk about him banging the buttons at the Senior Bowl, but can we just give a little bit of man love to Dave Phipp? Dude, you look at that return game, I don't care who's catching the ball, across the board, they've been just so exciting this preseason. The returns from these guys, I don't know if it's the blocking, I don't know if it's the players, I don't know what the heck's going on, but wow, man, to a man, every single time it's like, could go all the way. Could go all the way. This is exciting ass football. For people that are like, special teams, this Detroit Lions preseason kick return and punt return teams have been fire. Oh, God, man. Phipp, love you, buddy. And for you, this one's for you, Phipp.
You've had enough of that shit.
He loved that button more than anyone.
He hit that button so many times. It was great. So I don't know. Did you hear the pregame interview that our friend Dan Miller did with Campbell?
I haven't seen that yet. I've got it queued.
He was asking him about what's going to make the differentiation between like the fifth and sixth cornerback and the third or fourth running back making the team or not. And Dan's like, special teams. Like, I don't care if the guy can't play on defense. If he's a better special teams player than a guy that can play on defense, he's making the roster over that guy. I'm paraphrasing there. But their attention to special teams, and I'll give Phipp some credit here because I see him do it. I also see Don Muehlbach coaching it. Their attention to detail on the nuts and bolts of every aspect of special teams is really cool. It's fun to watch them practice it. And that's not something that you normally say.
Such a great point, Riz, because I posed everything as a question. Like, is it like, what? Is it the blocking? It is, the players, of course, are all gifted. But the difference is Dave Phipp as a coach, very much like Hank Fraley on that offensive line and bringing these guys, second, third string guys into play and having a strong offensive line throughout injury the last 2 years, really. The special teams work is the result of the mastery of coaching and the teaching, the absolute teaching and attention to detail of Dave Phipp. He's a gangster, guys. He's an absolute gangster. Gang Phipp. He's the dude, man. And he's not going to get credit. I just, it's this kind of time of year where people start looking at some of these things that they don't look at because they're looking for more to talk about or whatever. But Phipp deserves every bit. I mean, again, beyond the Senior Bowl, he was such a joy to hang with and talk with at Senior Bowl when we got to spend the time with him.
Chris, he would have stayed with us for an hour.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
He loved it.
Yeah. He's fantastic.
He just loved talking ball, man.
Yep. He's out there and I'm telling you, he's a difference maker for these guys. This is really, really good stuff. I'm anticipating a good year. Whoever winds up making the team and is playing those special teams roles, you should anticipate a lot of fun in a space that's usually kind of routine as part of the football game. You wait for like something to break, and that's when special teams gets interesting. I think it's a anytime anything can happen kind of thing this year for the Detroit Lions on special teams in a good way.
They might have had some chicanery today.
Oh, yeah. All right. Okay. Let's see. We got a lot going on in the chat. Let's get on to the next one. The Jacksonville preseason. Anything else, Riz, from the preseason game you want to talk about?
No, it's done. It's over. We're
So
on
much-
to Carolina.
So much. So much to be excited about this team. I just felt like people got so twisted up about the 2s and 3s.
You know what, Chris?
Can we look at really quick the next game? Really, but go ahead and say what you're saying. Then I want to take us to the next game. Before
I'll just address this really quickly. Yeah. I think it's healthy that we experience this in the preseason.
Yep.
Because the level of disappointment and the collective doubt that we have now, like, oh my God, are we a paper tiger? Or is everything a house of cards? Are we wearing the emperor's new clothes? Like, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think it's good that we've had this collective conversation and thought process now, and not September 17th when they're playing Seattle and could very well be 0-2 after that game. I think it's better to get that out now.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I've said it before, I will say it again. The two best teams the Detroit Lions play all year are week 1 and week 2.
Yep. All right. I was going to get to another topic, but I want to hit this. I wonder how much Dre Bly has added to that backfield. They look especially good. Now, I just want to remind people that there was nobody talking about Dre Bly before I was.
Dre's got some sauce.
Who knew? It was even posted on Reddit. I posted it because people were...
You did.
On a little hidden subreddit that I show people about later. Yeah, Dre Bly coming to town very quietly, stepping in, making some moves, doing his thing. I'm certain that Dre has a lot to offer these players, and especially in the context of what he's surrounded with. People were worried about him coming from UNC, right? Or it wasn't NC State, it was UNC, right?
He was at North Carolina.
Yep.
His alma mater.
Yep. And they were worried, like, oh no, he wasn't. He's surrounded by professionals. He was the guy they saw. He was the shining star there that was bringing so much. And I think that he continues, his star continues to shine here in Detroit.
I got to look this guy up because I know he transferred. They had a corner last year at North Carolina who transferred to Louisville. His name is Storm Duck. That is his actual name.
That sounds like a wild fart.
He will be a guy that is going to be linked to the Lions in the next draft process. He's right now, I would peg him 3rd or 4th round. He did not have a good year last year. We'll see what happens after he transfers. But let's just say that he and Dre know each other really, really well.
Yep.
And it would not surprise anybody. There, college football starts this weekend, Chris. I am so excited. My Ohio Bobcats play at San Diego State Saturday night. See Curtis Rourke, best quarterback in the MAC, little brother of Nathan Rourke, who tore us up for the Jaguars. Mm-hmm. Action's back, baby.
All right. Now, I want to talk about. We got rid of the Jacksonville game. Let's look ahead a little bit. We've got a week. We're 1 week away from cutdowns, and we're going to continue to talk a little bit about the bubble watch and the roster here after this. That's the topic we're going to dive in on. But we've got a look ahead to a team that this is a game. I've seen people say we should put our starters in this 3rd preseason game. Riz, can you explain why these people are likely heavy drug users?
Oh my God.
Maybe that's a little accusatory. Maybe that's a little more than but talk about the starters will not be playing in week 3. Can we just start there?
Well, they're not. Dan waffled a little today, but if you watch the press conference and tell me that the starters are playing, they're not playing. Oh. Certainly not. Maybe a select few will. But Dan made it very clear going into the joint practices in his first press conference before Jacksonville week that is their starter time to get ready. And David Montgomery, after practice today, had an informal media session. You'll see some highlights of it. Jennifer Hammond interview. She was like the progenitor of the interview, and we all kind of glommed on to Hammer. Thanks, Hammer. And he basically reiterated, like, we got our work in. Like, we got Sharp playing the ones on the other teams. Like, we were blessed to be able to have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel like they are ready with that. And the flip side of that, and this is like, I get with the what Chris alleged you to be a drug user. I understand your trepidation. I understand the need. You want to see them get cohesion. You want to see them play. You want to see them. You want to see them get out on the field and do it together, even if it's just for a drive or two. I totally get that. But then I watch the backups. I'm like, I don't want one of these guys getting a hangnail on their pinky.
We'll talk about it.
Like, it's not worth it.
We'll get into this. We'll get into this. We've got our what are we calling it? The beachfront debate. We'll get there. But let's the one thing that I want people to think about. Okay, just straight 100%. We play these guys, these Carolina Panthers, in week 5. We don't want our starters out there. We don't want to show any piece of our playbook. We're not doing anything but maybe checking out some pretty bland plays for some guys to see it roll and go with it and move on. That's that. End of story.
There is no reason to watch this football game unless you have absolutely nothing better to do.
Riz talks to drug users. It's like an ABC after school special.
This is your brain on drugs.
No,
I want some bacon.
I get it. No, I mean, I want to see football, like real football, as much as anybody else. I'm cursed that I'm going to be in New York for the first game of the season. I have to watch it at a bar. I mean, not that part's a curse, but I'd rather be somewhere comfy, right? So I'd rather be comfy for the first one against Kansas City. That's going to be a nail biter, no matter what. No matter how the game goes, it's a nail biter. But there's no starters. There's no nothing going on. We're just going to see how our depth plays and check them out and get some final shakedowns of those fellas in Carolina. And we're not going to give them a whole lot of crazy real playbook kind of work. They're going to have to make it work the way it is. Also, they're going to have to do it in that jank ass field at Bank America Stadium in Carolina. Maybe it'll be better than it was last year since it's not 104 below zero though. So there you go. All right. I think we covered all that. Let's get to Riz. I want to move on to the next topic if that's okay with you.
Please do.
Roster bubble watch. There's a lot about it chomping at the bit on that for that here.
All right.
In the chat, folks are getting excited about the roster bubble. So first off, Riz, with all the new talent coming in on DLP, we know you're kind of feeling the pressure. Do you think you continue to make the team this year, or do you think there's a change on the weekly show?
I hope that I'm still on the first string.
What is it do you think that you bring to this team?
I'm feeling better about our depth.
All right, let's talk about the Lions roster. God, I'm so excited about what we have coming. Let's talk about the Lions roster, Rusty roster. We talked about Julian Okwara potentially being traded. We talked about the idea of guys that are likely on the edge and maybe not going to make the roster. They're good trade bait, low value stuff though, for other teams that just don't want to risk the waiver wire for those particular players. I think
Chris, I had a sheet that I got from camp today of the roster, and I circled the players, and it's in my car.
You know, it's hilarious. I still have the July 30th. It's talking about Hard Knocks, the last year's roster sitting here from. I haven't replaced it.
Wow.
So I'm looking here at Jared Davis. Do you think he makes the team?
He's actually already out for the year.
I know.
Sad. Damn, man, I feel bad for that dude. I love that guy. I don't like him playing football, but I love that guy.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. He's actually, and he's a genuinely wonderful, really like family man kind of guy too.
Yes, so. He is. He's a very cool guy. He just wasn't a very good or healthy football player.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Riz. So we've got the Okwara. What about the other Okwara brother known as Romeo?
So
Roster
I think
cut.
so.
Where do you see him?
I will say I think he's making it, and I will say one of the reasons is because today he was, when they did their individual positional drills, he was doing it at defensive tackle. And that tells me that they see him in a utility role. That's the role that Josh Paschal and John Kaminsky and Levi Onwuzurike, although Levi almost always plays inside, and Hutch actually played a little DT today. In fact, he went through that drill with the DTs too.
Do you think Hutch makes the team?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Is he your lock for the year?
He might be.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say Romeo. I think Romeo makes it. I think he's one of those guys that makes it, and then they put him on ice, and he is inactive every week until needed. Like, let's say Kaminsky, breaks his thumb again and has to miss a week or two. He didn't miss long with the broken thumb last year, or Paschal, or I don't know. They're all bleeding together now. Charles Harris. One of those guys gets hurt, you can call him up and he can play any of those spots. I think that's very valuable for reserve. And he did take a pay cut, so he's not expensive. There's no real reason not to keep him. There's nobody that's better than him from below, because the only two people that are below him on the depth chart right now, and this people are going to go crazy here. James Houston and Julian Okwara are the only people below Romeo on the depth chart at that position. That's one of the reasons why two of those guys are always playing at the end of the preseason game. They don't have anybody else. They don't have a UDFA this year. They don't have a 2022 7th round pick who's trying to make it in. That's their roster.
Yeah.
Romeo has consistently repped ahead of James Houston at that specific spot all summer. If you want to argue that, go argue with Aaron Glenn. Go argue with with the defensive line coach.
It's so interesting because James was so explosive last year. And he's
played the run well.
Yeah.
He played the run great against New York. He played it well against that's what they keep telling us. They're telling him that they want him to do is get better against the run, so you're not just out there. And when you get into the game, people are instantly going to run at you because they know you're only going to rush the passer.
Yep.
That's very much what was happening at the end of last season. And by the way, he was still pretty damn good at it.
Yeah.
He's expanded his game. It's inconsistent. You saw it against Jacksonville. He made a very nice play. He also had one where he ran right past the point of attack and got thrown on his butt. And unfortunately, that's indicative of where he's at. He's an inconsistent player now.
I'm interested to see how the team deals with a guy like him. Huge upside, played really well. After being told he would never play in the NFL,
that's right.
Really came alive. Did a great.
He did.
James Houston Memorial Boathorn. He came alive, played excellent, and then he comes out and he isn't. They're not seeing it this year. Right? Assuming that because of where he is in the rotation, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay, are they going to give up on that guy that quickly, or are they not? And this is indicative of the decision making of this team, right? Because look, if the other guys come in and are playing better than him, and they give up on him, or they cut him, or they try to stash him somewhere, that kind of gives you the real message that you are playing for a position on the Detroit Lions, that your performance matters. And that says it kind of in spades when it's a guy like James Houston, you do that too. So I'm just going to say right now, if James Houston does not make the roster, it's because the Detroit Lions are making hard decisions on whether you've earned your spot on the team. And people talk about wanting that all the time. But at the same time, fans get a little bit of a love affair with players, and sometimes they want to look past. A lot of guys, I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the chat right now about Oh God, your favorite cornerback. Darn it, we just talked about Will Harris.
Will Harris?
He's pants. What the hell? No, man.
He's absolutely making the team. Like he's not anywhere close to the bubble.
He's turned it around this year. He's really, and he was playing okay last year. He was on a good trajectory last year. Something happened though this offseason, right? He's gonna be on the roster, and he's earned the spot. He's earned the spot. So I just want people to think about that when these guys. I mean, number one, we talk about it. Hey, the Lions are finally in a position where they're gonna cut good guys, but now if they're cutting guys like Houston, and I'm not advocating for it because I like James Houston. I like what we saw. He's a great story.
I don't think he's going anywhere. I think
right, but if they
James
do,
Houston's making it.
If they do cut a guy like that, understand it's because of who earned it ahead of him, and that's a crazy place for this team to be. I want to really quick. People acting like we get a ton for the Okwara brothers. We talked about that a little bit. It's just not the time to get money for trades because people that are going to get cut, all it is beating the waiver wire. That's all you're doing when you do a trade for them, and that's it. Don Burr had me laughing with this one. This time next year, we're going to be saying we should trade Goff for 2 seconds and start Hooker.
Oh dear God.
Michael Irvin, is Levi making the team? You know what? I think he does. I think he does
too.
And I think he's a guy that's going to be probably start a little later. Kamish could get more playing time than Charles Harris. Yeah, Kamish played lights freaking out again. He's a guy that when the lights come on, he plays lights out.
And I will say
the sky is his ceiling, or his ceiling is the sky. Whatever.
If Brian Branch wasn't the best player on the field today, John Kaminsky was.
Yeah.
Like the sideline, I don't know that it was CJGJ, but I think it was CJGJ who was yelling, 7'9", you're trying to block him and you can't. And he's yelling that at Panay. Panay did not have a good day today. And I chalk that up to just being a bad day, but Kaminsky was on fire. He was better than Hutch today. He was better than Harris today. He was incredible. He was the best Lion Saturday too.
Yep.
He's the thing with him is he's not a guy that's going to beat your best blocker.
Yep.
But if you're focused on Aiden Hutchinson on the other side and Aleem and oh crap, that Branch guy, he's in the slot, he could blitz. Like he just needs that little bit of an edge. And Kaminsky can tear you apart, man. He's really good. He in their fight when they start 5 up front, and they did that today. He is one of the 5.
Yep.
And Josh Pascal backs him up, and they love Pascal too. And Pascal made a couple plays today as well. So
yeah. So that was interesting. So weird to hear that Sewell was off. That's not the first time in this preseason and training camp that Sewell has been off. Panay has had a couple of practices where he's not been right. He's just not been the Panay that everybody knows he is, and it's interesting. It's is he? It
is. I will say this, and I put it.
Head's not in it.
I kind of buried it in the thing that I wrote the practice report at Lions Wire, but I've watched this and I verified this with another person that I was watching practice with today. He's better when Vaitai is next to him than when Glasgow is next to him. It's very noticeable. And that's nothing against Graham Glasgow at all. I think I dare say that Graham Glasgow is probably better than Big V. But Sewell is just more comfortable. He's more at ease. He's more confident when Big V's next to him.
Yep.
And I don't know how they're going to quantify that. But I think it means that Big V is starting at right guard and that Graham will be your swing guy.
I'll tell you this much: a little bit of juice. I can't. Never mind. I can't give it away.
You probably can't say that. I kind of knew where you were going to go with that, and I'm like, do you really want to do that?
No.
Yeah. That's something that I'm going to guess the coaching staff has noticed that too.
Yep. The D line this year, Don Burr says we're stacked. Oddly, it feels like the way these guys are playing, 8 weeks ago, I don't think either one of us would have said we're stacked on the D line. these guys have stepped up. And look, we knew the defense was going to be improved, right?
Yeah.
Holy cow. This preseason, they've made leaps and bounds.
It's been very good.
We've seen Goff and the offense light it up in practice. We've seen him do it. We saw him do it against the Giants. We know it's there. There's consistency. And this is something
Thursday, they kicked the Jaguars' ass.
Yeah. And I mean, in the Stafford area.
Great that day.
In the Stafford era, right? There was a half of every football game that Stafford and the offense just couldn't play. And then they would light it up, right? And it was like, which half is it going to be? Which Stafford's going to show up? What do we got, right? It was just really weird. And I know Lions fans have a little bit of PTSD about that right now. Confident, I'm telling you, I'm confident in our offense. I just don't think that they're throwing everything at you. I'm just so impressed with the defense, not because of how they just played against our offense, right? But how they did play against the Jags, how they played against the Giants, and especially in the red zone, right? This is intriguing. This may, I was shooting in my mind. I was hoping we could get to like a number 20 kind of defense in the league this year. It's like if we could get there and maintain the offense, right? If we could just maintain, we could do some real damage. We could get that playoff win. It would be like, holy crap, right? The hype is real. They've accomplished something. And then, next year could really, really be the one where they blow the roof off. Cause as much as I dream and hope, sure, they have a shot at winning the Super Bowl if they make the playoffs. Everybody does, right? You can, it's just get in. And I absolutely believe the Lions will make the playoffs this year. But I don't walk into the playoffs right now, today, with this Lions team with confidence that we make the Super Bowl. As I see this defense evolve and see what they bring, my confidence is a little bit bolstered. I'm a little bit different than I was even 6 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. This team is interesting. This team is very, very interesting as to what they could do. And it's all going to, like you talked about, those first two games are going to be so damn difficult and so important, not just for the team, but for fans. If we can take away one, we come out of those two games 1-1. That's a big win, out of that, bro.
I'm very happy.
That's a big win. That is a big win.
Yeah. So let's go back to the bubble watch for a second, because the defensive line has one in Benito Jones.
Yes.
Who's going to be a guy who is very close. He's somewhere between 52 and 54 on the roster right now. He's one of those three spots. I actually had a good conversation last week with John Macaron from SI when we were talking about him. And we're like, he's making it, right? And we're looking at each other and like, well, who kind of beats him out? And it's like, he has, and this is where internal politicking comes into play. He has clearly played better this summer than Levi Onwuzurike. Like, no doubt about it. Anybody who's been in Allen Park will tell you Benito Jones has clearly been the better player all summer. But he's the guy that you claimed off waivers last year from Miami. Didn't really do a whole lot. He's very limited in what he does. He's your backup nose tackle if Broderick Martin isn't it. He can sort of play the three, or maybe you put him in and Broderick goes to the thing, but there's a very limited role in what he does, but he's really, really good at that. Is that enough to make him get on the team? Will he be the fifth defense? Will they keep 5 defensive tackles? Will they only keep 4? I actually did a projection where they only kept 3 because guys like Kaminsky and Pascal and other guys can all play that. I think they're keeping 4.
On that, let me just roll a little bit of a rumbler in there. People are saying, "Oh wow, we could keep 5 running backs because JMO's suspended." No. Well, but hold on, because JMO's suspended. Yeah, we could. Or what if we kept an extra defensive lineman? We don't have to sit there and hold an offensive player. You have every position on the roster open now to where you can hold somebody for up to 6 weeks. And that's a big fribbin' deal. It doesn't have to be an offensive player. So just don't get into that construct or that box. Don't put yourself in the box, because I know they aren't. And it's all about talent. Somewhere, some very talented player is going to be held on to because of the JMO suspension. And that's maybe, is it as a position that has a high propensity for injury? Maybe. Who knows? Who knows how they approach it? What's the strategy behind it? Very interesting, though. Real opportunity.
So a lot of the guys that we're talking, Benito Jones certainly fits that bill. On offense, I think Jermar Jefferson at running back is firmly on the, and it's not necessarily about Jermar as much as do we keep 4 running backs or do we only keep 3? As much as I would like for them to cut Jason Kabinda, and I say that he is a phenomenal human being, great guy, incredible locker room leader. I said earlier in the show, he's not one of the 70 best players on this football team. He's just not.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me a little bit that he's going to make this. I don't think there's any chance that he gets cut.
His intensity carries him very, very far, man.
and so I mentioned that earlier today that I think he's replaceable on special teams. Some of my colleagues think he's a little better than that, and we'll agree to disagree there. But I think it's kind of a moot point because I don't think he's going anywhere. If so,
the question is really on that is he differentiated enough on special teams that he's worth keeping? Even if you think if you differ on where he's at, I don't think anybody can make the argument that he's that much better on special teams than the next person they might keep.
I don't think he's better than Anthony Pittman, and Anthony Pittman is on the bubble on the other side.
Yeah.
I think Anthony Pittman's a better special teams player than Jason Kabinda. I don't think they're keeping 7 linebackers or even 6.
Yep.
That's the problem for him. Jalen Reeves-Maben, I think, honestly, today played himself off the bubble and on as, for sure, the 5th linebacker. He was great today. Great on special teams, but also great in defense, and specifically in the role of backing up what Derek Barnes does. Yep. He looked great today. And he does have the special teams pelt on the wall. So I think he played his way off. Now you're talking more about positions rather than players. Are they going to keep 6 safeties, cornerback, defensive back? I just punched my headphones. Are they going to keep Nate Sudfeld?
Oh, man. They will. They will.
I think they will. I do too. I'm not crazy about that. But so here's the thing, and I phrase this weirdly, and I hope that it comes across when I say it better as I say it rather than write it. He's actually pretty good, except when he's not, and then he's terrible. And that's like his baseline is better than Teddy. Like, I don't have any doubt in my mind about that. The problem is that his baseline bounces all over the place, and his low is really freaking low. Like Tim Boyle, we're down there where it's unacceptable. That's a problem.
Just to go back to Kabinda really quick, I'm an economics guy. Comparative advantage. What's the differential between him and somebody else on special teams? What's the differential between him and Brock Wright? And I don't remember who put it in the chat. Sorry if I missed you. Brock Wright or Matt Nelson. Steve Wild said that. As your fullback, as a blocker, right? What's the comparative advantage of that position, that person, that player that you keep on the roster in place of that differential in what he gives you between those people, those positions? I'm having a hard time. There's not a lot of love in the chat for him, but I'm having a hard time. As much as like he was fun, very meme worthy, I'm just having a hard time making a case for him to make it on the 53 side of the roster. It is. And that position just doesn't really exist much anymore.
He cannot keep dropping passes. He just can't.
No. And that was a bad one. That was a bad one in that last game, bro.
That really was. That was rough. Let me throw this at you. Benito Jones can play fullback.
There you go.
How would you like to have a 337-pound like Benito Jones coming at you instead of a 245-pound Jason Kabinda who still blocks way too freaking high?
I was wondering about, and you can laugh all you want, but you talk about the rugby play on the goal line kind of play. What about a guy number one, Broderick Martin, right? crazy, right? But what about a guy? Here's one that I think is actually like crazy interesting. Aleem McNeil, with his new svelte, quick, but still powerful self. He's an interesting guy that could take a role there as well, man.
I'll give you another one. John Kaminsky was an option quarterback in high school.
There you go.
A good one.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of possibilities, a lot of options. And I think there's all kinds of stuff there. All right, Riz, anything else in the bubble watch you want to cover before we roll?
Let's talk about the undrafted defensive backs. I think Starling Thomas isn't even on the bubble. I think he's solidly on, and I think he proved that by we'll go to special teams for a second. First 2 punts against Jacksonville, Starling Thomas as the gunner forced fair catches. That's making the team, like that right there. Aside from the fact that he can also return kicks. And he's a pretty promising cornerback. I think some folks are writing some checks that his game can't quite cash yet in coverage, but he's worthy of certainly keeping around and developing. And I do think he is a guy that if they tried to cut him, would get claimed by somewhere else.
Yep.
Stephen Gilmore is very difficult.
Yeah. God.
I don't know on that one. Stephen
Are you
Gilmore,
buying
Chase
pedigree?
Lucas. Yeah, that's the hard part because he wasn't great today. He did have a nice play, but Thomas is clearly ahead of him. I think it's between Stephen Gilmore and Chase Lucas. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas has been better, but he kind of plateaued and didn't play well against Jacksonville in practices or the game. Special teams is fair.
Yeah.
I think Gilmore offers you more defensively, but I'm not sure that either of them is going to make it. I'll give you another guy, though, that's bubbling up, and that's Brandon Joseph from Notre Dame and originally from Northwestern, where he was
Kirby's little brother.
Notre Dame. Yes.
Sorry,
that's what happens when AI writes articles, Chris. That right there is what happens.
You don't know that I'm real.
To earlier conversation, because that was actually published by.
Unfortunately, you've met me. Otherwise, I could play that out pretty far. But
I know. Brandon Joseph made the interception at the end of the Giants game. Played relatively well against Jacksonville. Has played relatively well in the joint practices. Has seen his special teams responsibilities increasing. I don't know if he's going to make it, but if there's a dark horse to make your defense, it would be him. And that would be because if he is still injured, it's because Savion Smith, I didn't see him today. Emmanuel Mosley is not going to be playing football anytime soon, I'm afraid. So maybe there's a spot for a guy like that to come in, and then after 6 weeks, when a certain number 9 comes back, he can go to the practice squad. And
Stafford's coming back?
Oh my God.
You heard it here, folks. Rumor, Jeff Risdon says, number 9 coming back to Detroit.
People are going to actually think that. This is a problem with AI. AI is going to scour this podcast and glean that, and I will get misquoted on it, and Stephen A. Smith will have my ass.
Again, but this time in print. All right, let's get to the next topic. Let's move on, because it's good to move on.
Stephen A. Smith was a brilliant writer. Wish he went back to that.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
One of my sports writing, like one of the people that I really wanted to like take after, like his basketball stuff was so freaking good, and now he's what he is.
Now here you are on the best Detroit Lions podcast in the land.
That's right.
That's right. All right, let's get to the next.
Anybody else in the bubble? Let me think. Wide receiver Dylan Drummond, maybe. I think Dylan Drummond makes it. I don't think Chase Cota makes it. I'm going to speed walk through these. I think they're only keeping 3 running backs. Craig Reynolds is absolutely the number 3 running back. There's no debate about that, internal or external. If they keep a fourth, I think it's Benny Snell because he's got specialty. He's got 1,000 special teams reps.
Can I jump in really quick? This is a big one, and we hit this. Liam Gaddy, guys, I think we should poach other teams for offensive tackle depth, just to kind of reiterate that. Yeah. People have starters that may not be as good as our best backups, just so you know. And when you start getting down the roster at their backups, you're going to have a hard time. I mean, you are now at the bottom of the depth pile. I wouldn't even look at that position, to be honest. I don't know if there's gems out there.
I said it earlier in the podcast. I've had people who cover other teams asking me what it would take to get Jermaine Ifedi out of Detroit and onto their roster because he's better than anything they've got. Multiple teams. That's the reality of where offensive line is. You're not finding anybody who's better anywhere. I know people have mentioned Taylor Lewan. Taylor Lewan's happy being a podcaster. He's had so many freaking injuries. He doesn't need this crap anymore. He knows it too.
Oh God, yeah. And any day, I would rather have podcaster money than football money. Any day of the week. You know, Riz. You know what we're talking about.
Taylor Lewan. I'm not a Titans fan, but I enjoy his podcast. He and the guy that does it with, I'm blanking on his name. They're good. They're pretty good. They do it on a bus. It's good.
Busting with the boys.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
All right, we're gonna go on to the next topic, Riz.
All right.
You can't make us stay. All right. Beachfront debate, because that's where we're at. We're down here in Tampa. We're getting ready for the game against Tampa. There will be a party. There will be a pregame, postgame tailgate. Get yourself ready if you're going to come to the game. We got some real fun. A couple of us even have some reservations for a real fine dinner the evening before, right, Sam? And Colin. Here we are. Beachfront debate. Should starters play preseason games? We touched on this a little bit. What is a beachfront debate? Well, we wanted to be just like the real journalists. And we knew AI was listening. So we wanted to say, we figured out if we covered both sides, if we said the pros and the cons, then we couldn't be told we're wrong because we said the thing that wound up being right. So we are going to do a flip-flop style debate, beachfront flip-flop debate. We'll start out, we'll argue one side, and then we'll argue the other side, and then we'll have it all figured out, and the AI can suck it. By the way, brand spanking new sweet NFC Central champs.
That's a great
1991
shirt.
Detroit Lions.
Love that shirt.
DetroitLionsPodcast.com/store. Get your shirt immediately there.
Chris, awesome. Is that where I can get that shirt? Where can I get it again?
DetroitLionsPodcast.com/store, my good friend. It is a one of a kind. It's a great shirt, and it's super soft. All right. Let's do the flip-flop debate. Should starters play this preseason game? Riz, I absolutely believe that the starters should be out there playing every game because we all see the first week of football. We see how terrible these teams are. Teams that would otherwise win throughout the season don't get a chance because their starters haven't played together. They don't have their timing down. They don't have anything figured out. They have no idea how to play football together. Absolutely, 100% starters should be on the field in the preseason because you only have 17 games, and 17 games is not enough to give one away to chance because you haven't got your best players ready to play the game. Oh, now you can go counterpoint.
We're talking about practice games. Like they've had so many reps against the joint practices. Against the Giants, against the Jaguars. Like they've had those reps. Trust your coaches to get the players ready. We love this coaching staff, right? Right? Let's give the little faith in them that they understand their team and that they will have them ready, that they're working enough in practice to take care of it, and they don't need to see it in the games.
You have to play your starters in order to get them a taste of winning. If these guys don't get out there and know what winning is like, you're teaching them how to lose. Those players need to come out, play those preseason games, have that thrill of victory, stomping the fools they're playing against so that when they hit the season, they hit it at full speed and they just roll through their opponents because they've learned how to win.
Coach Marinelli, go away. That was Rod Marinelli's exact rationale when they went 4-0 and kicked everybody's ass in the 2008 preseason.
Brandon knew where I was going in the chat here. He popped it up there too. I did it pretty convincingly though, didn't I?
You did. You oh man, Rod Marinelli, great defensive line coach.
All right. Now it is your turn, my friend Riz.
All
you
right.
have to take the pro, play the starters, because you never know. You could be right with this wonderful argument that you're about to
I'm
make.
going to go into a different direction here because it's something that I got a lot of feedback on actually going to the Jacksonville game. The fans paid to see good football.
Ooh.
Like they're disappointed and not like this is my one chance. Like I'll make a straw man here. This is one chance to take my little boy Johnny to go see Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson. They're never going to get a chance. We can't afford regular season tickets, so we go to the preseason to see these players play. Throw us a freaking bone, man.
That's fair. But you know what? Those same kids, they get an opportunity that they're not otherwise going to get. Since you're a broke-ass guy who can't go to any of those other games, can't take your family out there to a $7,000 game for a family of four, these kids get a chance to get an autograph from the likes of Jared Goff because he's not too busy playing the game. He's there interacting with the fans along the sidelines. Him and Amon-Ra and Hutch are out there doing that work with the crowd and giving these kids a chance to meet their heroes.
Well, I like that.
This is fun.
That's good. Why else would I play my starters? I would actually, I actually do kind of believe this too. I do think there's some value in younger starters, like getting a taste for being in a stadium. Like I've never been on especially this week. This is their first road game for the rookies. Like let's see what it's like to prepare, to stay in the team hotel, to go out there, to have to get ready on a game day. This is a night game. Like that's another variable. Like this is our chance to prepare for. Like there's a lot of things that can go into the preparation cycle, and then you just sit there and you don't play. It's like blue balls, man. Like let me have the climax. Let me get out there. Let me experience this. And I think that would be good for some of the rookies, especially the rookies that are on the roster bubble. Like maybe you'll get a chance to understand. Like for starter, like Brian Branch, like he hasn't played really yet. Like let's let him feel what the hard turf is like so he knows how to prepare for it when they go back to Carolina. That would be my that's not an argument for all the starters, but for guys like Branch and Broderick Martin. Well, he's not going to start. That's a bad example. Some of the younger guys that are going to play. Gibbs, let's let him get out there and let's let him see what he can do on an outdoor stadium, their crap turf. Prepare, like I kind of want to see how that. I do want to see how that plays out. Actually, that's probably my most convincing argument, and I do sort of believe that.
If I'm Dan Campbell, I'm telling you that turf is nowhere near as hard as
these nuts.
But besides that,
God. I forget you're 12 sometimes.
Yeah, you gotta. I cover it up sometimes. Sometimes I know. There's obviously the injury opportunity that could happen. That's why I don't play him. But the other side of it is these are professionals. I don't care. These men are professionals. They are expected to play when they are expected to play. They need to be ready, prepared, and the coaching staff is professionals. The players are professionals. This team will be ready at second one of game one. When that clock starts ticking, these boys will be ready to show up when those lights go on. That's what a professional does. And if they can't do it, they don't deserve to play in the NFL. And every one of these men in the 53-man roster, all the way through the coaching staff to the front office, they deserve to be there. There you go. Flip-flop, beachfront debate for should the starters play in the season. That was kind of fun. I enjoyed that.
I would just say
you're now arguing your way into saying starters should play. Oh, this is good.
No, because my overriding take when we sat down to do this in the pre-show, and I had this conversation with somebody in the stands today, and I'm like, we just watched Jacksonville eviscerate our depth. Like, We don't want to see that. We don't want to see these guys play if they don't have to. Like, for God's sakes, don't get anybody hurt. There was a play today. Derek Barnes came up like gimpy, like oh, I hurt his foot. He hopped off. And we're like, oh crap, this is not good.
Yeah.
He wound up coming back in. He actually made an interception. He picked off Goff later, or no, he tip drilled an interception to CJ because Gibbs couldn't run past him on a route. That's where Derek Barnes' speed is, going up on a wheel route on the outside. Barnes covered it perfectly, deflected it up, and CJ got the interception. Like, that doesn't happen if Barnes gets hurt and is like really hurt. Like, you cannot risk it, especially when you're playing the team later in the year and you're not going to be doing anything that you're going to do anyways. This game, it wouldn't surprise me if they turn and hand the ball off like 50 times. Let's get out of here. Let's go home. We're good. We're good.
Yeah, no, it's. I think that's a lot of what we're going to see. I don't think they want to hurt the depth. I don't think they want to hurt anything across those boys. But that's where it was. That was fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. I mean, these little things where, because you can kind of see a little bit of both sides. I have an opinion.
I wish I was closer to a beach, because I'm actually in Canton, Michigan right now, and that's nowhere near a beach. I'm near IKEA.
Oh God, I'm gonna be heading out for rum runners tomorrow down on the beach. Rockaway Cafe down in Clearwater Beach, gorgeous. I'll say there's, we talk so much black and white about thoughts and opinions on the show, but most of these things come from things that are relatively nuanced, and you can make arguments on both sides, but we often have to land in a kind of a place when we talk about it. And this is kind of fun because you got to work through some of the things, maybe you did or didn't, some of them were silly, but you get to work through some of the thinking and some of the other angles that people are arguing, right? To have that conversation. I absolutely still land in the don't play the starters side. I saw that you were getting convinced by my wonderful debate skills, my master debating, but you did manage to keep yourself in line with where you started. So good work, Riz.
I'm a fairly level-headed person, except when I'm not. Much like Nate Sudfeld is a pretty good quarterback, except when he's not. A fairly level-headed person.
Can't trust him. Can't trust you. Can't trust Sudfeld. That's the one thing you guys get
straight, man. It's like you're talking to my wife.
You never know when you're going to show up, but with a different, like in the headphones. All right, let's get to the next one. Want to touch on something really quickly. This is season for St. Jude. We're going to be doing fundraising this year for St. Jude all season long. It's a great season for the Lions. Like this shirt right here, it's a harbinger of joy and winning, bringing a winning culture and a winning mindset back to, and a confidence back to fans. Get rid of that old kind of loser mindset. Take pride in that 91 championship in the NFC Central. And this year we'll also print a NFC North champion shirt. All things considered and going well, but with St. Jude, it's an all season thing for us. It's we wanted to really put some focus on it this year. There's a lot of eyeballs on what we do. It's the one thing, I mean, that I laugh about it and say that our whole reason for the podcast is to launder other people's money into the hands of very, very good charities, and St. Jude is one of them. We're just here to help people and families when they need it. So if you guys could help out along the way, we'll talk about it a lot. We will try not to beat your ears off, but we do want to remind you, it is stjude.org/DLP. Your name will go across the scroll bar. You get the money counted in there towards the goal of $50,000. It's stjude.org/DLP. You can do a donation. They do PayPal, credit cards, the whole, 100,000 different ways you can donate there. Please do so. It's a great cause, great people, and great families that deserve help at a time when they really, really are looking for a hand up when they could use it the most. So anything you can do there, it's something we're going to dedicate the season to this year.
And that is important to us. Like, it really is. Like, we actually talk about that off the air when we're talking, like, what more can we do to help St. Jude's? I'm glad that you have drawn me into your web on that. I'm very proud to be part of that.
Nice. I say it every year, and people, a lot of them don't like the idea of where it came from, but I think it's something to remember. It started with Matt Patricia on the combine. I was sitting in a hotel room in California watching the combine. He made a donation and he didn't want to take credit for it. He wouldn't go on TV. He just, and it went, and Eisen was a little bit stunned. The way he put it was a sizable donation. And I was like, you know what? Fans can do it too. And
a lot of zeros.
Started. Yeah.
A lot of zeros.
So that's something we can do. Anything you can do as well. stjude.org/DLP. Get that in there and help us raise some money for those sick kids. Thank you, everybody, for doing that. And thank you for indulging us while we do this. Let's go. When we win the North, who is most likely to vie for second, Chicago or Green Bay? So it's going to be Minnesota and who? Because he said vying for second. None of them will even vie for first. So it is a has-been battle. Who do you think? It's going to be Minnesota and who, Riz?
You keep saying vie, and I'm thinking Steve Vai, and I've got the audiences listening in my head now.
Vi tie. Think of that.
Vi tie. I think Chicago is going to be one of the most improved teams in the NFL this year, but they have to be because they were the worst last year. They had the number 1 pick. They traded out. I think 9-8 wins the division, quite frankly. I think the Lions are far and away the most likely to get to that 9-8 mark, if not better. I think Green Bay, if their defense plays to the sum of its parts, and they haven't done that very well lately, and their young receivers develop, I think even with Jordan Love not being very good, I think they're going to be all right. I don't think they're going to threaten the Lions, but I think that they can threaten the Vikings to be 8-9, 7-10, maybe 9-8 if they stay completely healthy all year. And I think Chicago's ceiling is, like, if everything goes great for them, it's like 7-10. And that's their rookie safety last year was their leading sacker. Like they've done a lot, they haven't done enough. Like they are going into where the Lions were at the beginning of last year. They've just got so far to go to get up. So I don't think they can make the leap. I think it's going to be Minnesota and then Green Bay. Minnesota fascinates me because their top end talent is still really good, but their team collectively got worse. And I don't know how they're going to handle it.
I'll tell you what, the only sacks they're going to get this year contain
these nuts.
Oh my God.
Thanks, Campbell. I love you, brother. No. It's going to be interesting. I agree. I think Chicago is a very scary, interesting team. They don't have all the pieces. It's not all put together. They very much remind me of the Lions last year. And it's going to take a lot. I mean, they have the benefit of a quarterback that could really be good. You don't know yet, right? You have the mobile part of the quarterback down. If he can start throwing the ball, you could have some significant
They finally got him. They got him at least one NFL caliber receiver. He didn't have any last year, so
yeah,
can't hurt. His best running back though is in Detroit now. David Montgomery looks good, folks. He looks good.
Yep.
He looks good.
There you go. All right. With that, we're going to talk about some quick closey things. First, about the Patreon. It's a great place to hang out with the Riz and I and Michael and a couple of new folks who are joining us. Be ready for that. Ash, I keep calling him Michael. It's Gray. It's Michael Gray. It's Michael. It's all those things. He's
just call him Gray.
He's just so cuddly.
He's Gray.
Call him my little cuddle monkey.
I think his wife calls him Gray.
No, she doesn't. I know better. The whole crew hangs out and a lot of really, really great people. It's a lot of fun. Talking Lions, respectful. I mean, there's disagreements, but it is respectful disagreements. It's the most intelligent.
You're allowed to disagree.
Most intelligent Lions chat on the internet.
Disagreement is great. That's how progress gets made.
Absolutely.
As long as you're not flinging poo at one another, you're fine. Like you wind up being in a better spot for it.
Without being disagreeable.
Right. Disagree without being disagreeable.
There you go. All right.
And if somebody presents you with a fact that like changes your mind, like acknowledge it.
100%. 100%. So patreon.com/Detroit Lions podcast gets you access to that love site, the Slack. And it's got all kinds of college sports, other sports, hockey, basketball, all that. There's different channels for all that: home improvement, gambling, investing.
DLP dining has some good
DLP
stuff in it.
gains, baby. I mean, there's, what I'm looking right now, 450 people in there hanging out, and they're very, very focused and smart and experts in their field type of people. Really, really good group of folks. Check it out. Patreon.com/Detroit Lions podcast. You got to donate at least $5 a month to get into there, but it's worth every single one of them. I'm telling you that for sure. Also,
just correct.
Follow us on the Tweeter Maker at DET Lions Podcast, DET Lions Podcast, at Jeff Risden, and go pants free, especially on the Tickety Tockety. We are pants free there all the time. DET Lions Pod. That's where we're at there. Give us a call via Skype, Detroit Lions Podcast, all one word, Detroit Lions Podcast. And you can use the regular old phone and call us at 248-782-8384, 248-RUB-YOU-FUG. Remember that number, because that's going to be the call-in line for our post-game shows. They're coming back, yay. Be sure to go to the Detroit Lions Podcast, subscribe to the podcast, because Riz, while they got their lips wrapped around the fire hose, what are you doing to them?
I'm coming into your ear holes automatically.
That's right. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to see you next time on the Detroit Lions Podcast. Remember, no pants, no toasters, no hot tubs, and no problems, because we're your Detroit Lions and Reddit connection. Please get your ears cleaned regularly.